Something interesting is happening in the background of the financial world, and most people are not paying attention to it yet. While the headlines are filled with artificial intelligence breakthroughs, electric vehicles, and space exploration, there are quiet movements taking place in the physical world of resources. One of those movements involves silver. Recently, a massive amount of physical silver quietly moved into the vaults of one of the most powerful financial institutions on the planet, JPMorgan Chase. We are talking about roughly 12 million ounces of real physical silver, not paper contracts, not digital numbers on a screen, actual metal. When an institution operating at that level accumulates a resource at that scale, the question is not whether it matters. The question is why it matters, because organizations with that kind of information network do not move billions of dollars in assets without a reason. They are usually looking years ahead while everyone else is focused on the present moment. The fascinating part is that silver sits at the intersection of finance, technology, and energy. If the world is heading toward an electrified civilization powered by advanced technology, then the materials enabling that transformation become strategically important. When you see quiet accumulation happening before the broader market fully understands the implications, it raises a powerful question. What do they see coming that the rest of the world has not realized yet? When you think about the future, most people imagine software, artificial intelligence, rockets, and digital networks transforming the world. But the reality is that every technological revolution still depends on something very physical. It depends on materials that obey the laws of physics. You can design the most advanced machine ever created, but if the materials inside that machine cannot move electricity efficiently, the system simply does not perform at the level you need. That is where silver becomes incredibly interesting. Silver is not just another precious metal people store in vaults or wear as jewelry. It is the most efficient electrical conductor on Earth. That single property gives it a role inside modern technology that is difficult to replace. Whenever engineers design systems where electrical efficiency matters, silver quietly appears somewhere inside that architecture. It might be inside circuits, connectors, energy systems, or high-performance electronics. The world does not always talk about it, but the reality is that a surprising amount of modern technology relies on the simple fact that silver allows electricity to move with very little resistance. Now imagine the direction the world is heading. Humanity is moving into an era where electricity becomes the foundation of civilization. Energy systems are transforming as countries expand renewable power generation. Transportation is shifting from combustion engines toward electric mobility. Advanced electronics are spreading into nearly every aspect of daily life. Even infrastructure is becoming intelligent as sensors, processors, and digital networks connect cities and industries. Every one of these systems relies on electricity flowing efficiently through complex hardware. When electricity becomes the central nervous system of civilization, the materials that carry that electricity become incredibly valuable. Silver happens to sit at the very top of the conductivity hierarchy. This is not a marketing statement or a financial theory. It is a physical property defined by the structure of atoms and electrons. Nature itself designed silver to move electrical energy with extraordinary efficiency. Think about solar energy as an example. When sunlight hits a solar panel, the system must capture that energy and convert it into usable electricity. The more efficient the electrical pathway inside the panel, the more power you generate from the same amount of sunlight. Engineers optimize every part of the system to reduce energy loss. Silver plays an important role inside solar panels because it allows the electrical current generated by the photovoltaic cells to travel with minimal resistance. Now imagine the scale of solar energy expansion happening across the world. Entire deserts are turning into solar farms. Rooftops across cities are filling with panels that convert sunlight into electricity. Countries are investing billions of dollars into renewable energy infrastructure because it creates a cleaner and more sustainable energy system. Every panel installed requires a small amount of silver to function efficiently. Multiply that requirement across millions of installations each year, and you start to see how demand quietly builds over time. This is the fascinating thing about technological progress. Small physical requirements become massive when you scale them across global industries. A few grams of silver inside a single device may not seem significant, but when that device is produced millions of times, the total demand becomes enormous. The total demand becomes enormous. The world is building an electrified infrastructure where energy flows through smart grids, electric vehicles, renewable power plants, and intelligent devices. Each layer of that infrastructure relies on materials capable of handling electricity efficiently and reliably. Silver continues to appear in these systems because physics does not negotiate. Engineers choose materials based on performance, and silver consistently delivers exceptional results. At the same time, there is another dimension to this story, Fide, that involves how financial markets interact with the physical world. Modern financial systems are incredibly sophisticated. They allow traders and institutions to buy and sell representations of commodities without ever touching the real material. Futures contracts, options, and other financial instruments allow billions of dollars to move across global markets every day. These systems are efficient for managing risk and creating liquidity, but they also create a fascinating separation between digital trading and physical reality. You can trade paper claims on silver in enormous volumes, but eventually the real metal must exist somewhere because industries need it to build real products. Solar panels cannot operate on financial contracts. Solar panels cannot operate on financial contracts. Electric systems cannot run on digital promises. At some point, the physical resource must be mined, refined, and delivered to the factories that require it. When a large financial institution decides to accumulate physical silver, rather than simply trading financial exposure, it becomes an interesting signal. Institutions operating at that level have access to extensive research networks, global economic data, and advanced analytical models. They study supply chains, industrial trends, and long-term technological shifts that may influence demand for critical resources. When an organization like JPMorgan Chase moves significant quantities of physical metal into storage, it naturally raises curiosity about what they might be anticipating. Institutions of that scale rarely move resources randomly. They operate with strategic thinking that often looks years into the future rather than focusing only on immediate market fluctuations. This does not necessarily mean there is some hidden conspiracy or dramatic secret plan unfolding behind the scenes. The world is usually more rational than that. What it often means is that experienced analysts are observing trends that suggest certain materials may become more important over time. They analyze industrial demand, technological adoption, mining supply, and geopolitical factors that influence resource availability. When those variables begin pointing toward potential long-term importance, institutions may position themselves accordingly. Physical assets sometimes provide a form of security in a world where digital markets can move extremely quickly. There is also a deeper philosophical layer to this idea. Humanity is entering a period where digital technologies dominate conversations about the future. Artificial intelligence, cloud computing, robotics, and advanced software platforms are transforming industries at remarkable speed. But none of these systems exist in isolation from the physical world. Every server running complex algorithms requires electricity. Every network connecting billions of devices depends on hardware that conducts electrical signals efficiently. Even the most advanced artificial intelligence ultimately operates inside physical machines built from materials extracted from the earth. This connection between digital innovation and physical resources is easy to overlook because software moves at incredible speed while mining and material production move much more slowly. Silver quietly sits at the intersection of these two worlds. It supports the hardware that powers digital infrastructure, while also enabling the electrical systems that run renewable energy networks and electrified transportation. When people begin to recognize how deeply certain materials are woven into the architecture of technological progress, their perception of those resources changes. A metal that once seemed ordinary suddenly appears as a critical component of global innovation. Institutions that analyze long-term technological trajectories often see these connections earlier than the broader public because they spend enormous effort studying how industries evolve. What makes this moment exciting is the realization that the future is not just shaped by ideas, but also by the elements that make those ideas possible. Visionary technologies require equally powerful physical foundations. The materials enabling efficient electricity flow will always play a central role, in building an advanced civilization. Silver happens to be one of those materials whose unique properties align perfectly with the electrified world humanity is creating. When powerful institutions quietly accumulate physical quantities of such a resource, it invites a deeper conversation about how technology, energy, and the physical laws of the universe come together to shape the next chapter of human progress. When you begin to think about scale, the conversation around silver becomes even more fascinating. 12 million ounces sounds like a massive amount when you hear the number for the first time. But the real question is how that number fits into the broader transformation happening across global industries. Humanity is entering a period where electricity becomes the dominant form of energy distribution. Renewable energy systems are expanding rapidly because they allow countries to generate power without relying on finite fossil fuels. Solar energy, in particular, is experiencing extraordinary growth because sunlight is essentially the most abundant energy source available on Earth. But solar panels do not simply convert light into electricity by magic. They rely on carefully engineered materials that capture energy and move it through conductive pathways. Silver plays a crucial role inside that process because its conductivity allows electrical current to travel efficiently from the photovoltaic cells into the grid. Now imagine millions of solar panels being installed every single year across rooftops, solar farms, and entire energy infrastructures. Each panel requires small amounts of silver in order to perform efficiently. Individually, those quantities appear tiny, but scale transforms everything. When technologies expand across continents, the small amounts inside each unit multiply into enormous demand for raw materials. Countries around the world are investing heavily in renewable energy because energy independence and sustainability have become strategic priorities. Governments, corporations, and innovators are all pushing toward a future where electricity generated from renewable sources powers homes, transportation, and industries. As that expansion continues, the demand for highly conductive materials grows alongside it. Transportation represents another powerful force behind this transformation. For more than a century, the internal combustion engine dominated global mobility. Gasoline and diesel-powered vehicles shaped infrastructure, cities, and entire economic systems. But the world is now shifting toward electric mobility at a pace that is accelerating every year. Electric vehicles are fundamentally different from traditional cars. Instead of relying on explosions inside an engine block, they operate through sophisticated electrical systems powered by advanced battery technology. Electricity flows constantly between batteries, motors, sensors, and control systems. Every component must communicate and operate with precision in order to deliver the performance drivers expect. Electric vehicles are essentially computers on wheels connected to powerful energy storage systems. They contain complex electronics that manage everything from battery temperature to acceleration and regenerative braking. Inside those systems, there are numerous connections where electricity must move efficiently through circuits and conductive materials. Silver appears in many of these applications because engineers designing high-performance electrical systems need materials that minimize resistance and maximize reliability. As electric vehicles become more common across global markets, the materials supporting their electrical infrastructure naturally become more important. Companies pushing the boundaries of electric transportation, such as Tesla Inc., have demonstrated how transformative this technology can be. Electric vehicles are no longer experimental prototypes or niche products. They are becoming mainstream options that compete directly with traditional cars in performance, efficiency, and long-term operating cost. Once consumers experience instant torque, quiet operation, and reduced maintenance, the transition begins accelerating through market demand rather than government policy alone. As production volumes increase across the automotive industry, millions of electric vehicles will enter global roads every year. Now step back and think about what that means for the materials supporting these technologies. Every electric vehicle requires conductive materials inside its electrical architecture. Every renewable energy installation requires conductive pathways to deliver electricity efficiently. Data centers powering artificial intelligence systems require massive electrical infrastructure to operate continuously without interruption. The world is building a civilization where electricity flows through everything. That shift naturally increases the strategic importance of materials capable of handling that flow with minimal energy loss. Silver stands at the center of that equation because physics placed it at the top of the conductivity hierarchy. The interesting thing about resources is that supply rarely expands as quickly as technological demand. Mining is not a process that can instantly scale when industries suddenly require more material. Discovering a new mineral deposit involves geological exploration, drilling, environmental studies, and years of planning before extraction even begins. Once a viable deposit is identified, companies must invest billions of dollars in infrastructure, equipment, and regulatory approvals before production becomes possible. Even then, the process of extracting and refining metal from the earth requires time and careful engineering. The physical world operates on slower timelines than the digital economy. Silver production faces another interesting challenge because much of the global supply does not come from mines dedicated exclusively to silver extraction. Instead, it often appears as a byproduct of mining other metals such as copper, lead, or zinc. That means silver supply is partly dependent on the economic conditions driving those other industries. If demand for copper changes or mining companies adjust their production strategies, the amount of silver entering the market can shift even if demand for silver itself is rising. This creates a complex relationship between industrial demand and resource availability that can sometimes surprise markets. When institutions analyze these dynamics, they often look far beyond current prices or short-term market sentiment. They examine how global technologies are evolving and how those technologies interact with the resources required to build them. If renewable energy continues expanding, if electric vehicles become dominant in transportation, and if digital infrastructure continues scaling across the planet, then the materials supporting those systems naturally become more important over time. Strategic accumulation of physical resources may reflect an understanding that long-term technological trends could reshape the demand landscape for certain metals. At the same time, there is another powerful force that influences markets and resource perception. That force is human attention. Markets do not always focus on the things that matter most. Sometimes they become captivated by the newest trend or the most exciting story of the moment. Over the past decade, much of the world's attention has focused on digital technologies. Artificial intelligence, cloud computing, and cryptocurrencies have dominated conversations about the future. These innovations are incredibly powerful, and they deserve the excitement surrounding them. But beneath the digital layer, there remains a physical foundation that supports every technological system. The moment people begin recognizing that foundation, perception can shift quickly. When industries, investors, and policymakers start connecting the dots between technological expansion and resource demand, they begin examining materials that once seemed ordinary. A metal that quietly powered electronics for decades suddenly appears in a new light because its properties align perfectly with the infrastructure of the future. Awareness spreads through financial markets, research communities, and industrial planning. What once felt like a niche discussion becomes a central topic in conversations about energy, technology, and economic resilience. Human history is full of moments where the importance of a resource becomes clear only after society begins relying on it at massive scale. Oil shaped the industrial age because it powered transportation and manufacturing. Silicon became the backbone of the digital revolution because it enabled semiconductor technology. Silver now finds itself at the intersection of electricity, renewable energy, and advanced electronics. As the world continues building systems that depend on efficient electrical flow, the quiet metal supporting those systems gains strategic relevance. When institutions move resources quietly before the broader narrative changes, it often reflects an understanding that the future is being built long before most people notice it. The signals are there for anyone willing to look closely at how technology, energy, and materials interact. The electrified civilization humanity is constructing requires elements that obey the laws of physics in the most efficient way possible. Silver happens to be one of those elements, and its role within the architecture of modern technology continues expanding as innovation pushes forward. When you step back and look at the entire picture, something powerful begins to emerge. The world is changing faster than most people realize. Energy systems are transforming, transportation is becoming electric, artificial intelligence is expanding, and digital infrastructure is connecting billions of people and machines. All of these innovations feel futuristic, but they depend on something very real and very physical. They depend on materials that allow electricity to move efficiently through the systems we are building. Silver quietly sits at the center of that reality. For decades, it has supported technology from the background, rarely receiving the same attention as the industries it helps power. Yet the more the world electrifies, the more important that role becomes. At the same time, movements within global finance sometimes reveal subtle signals about how institutions see the future unfolding. When an organization with enormous resources and analytical capability, like JPMorgan Chase, quietly accumulates millions of ounces of physical silver, it naturally sparks curiosity. Institutions at that level are constantly studying long-term trends, supply chains, technological development, and industrial demand. Their decisions often reflect years of analysis about where the world might be heading, rather than simply reacting to the present moment. Whether the motivation is strategic positioning, long-term resource security, or preparation for industrial demand, the message hidden inside such actions is simple: the physical world still matters. The exciting part about this moment in history is that humanity is building an electrified civilization. Renewable energy continues expanding across continents. Electric vehicles are redefining transportation, driven by companies pushing innovation forward, such as Tesla, Inc. Artificial intelligence is accelerating digital progress while requiring massive electrical infrastructure to operate. All of these systems share a common foundation. Electricity must move through them efficiently and reliably. Materials capable of delivering that performance will always remain critical to technological progress. What often surprises people is how quietly these shifts begin. The future rarely announces itself with loud headlines at the start. Instead, it grows gradually as technologies scale, industries adapt, and resources gain importance over time. Eventually, awareness spreads and people begin connecting the dots between innovation and the materials that make it possible. When that moment arrives, the narrative surrounding certain resources can change very quickly because society suddenly understands how essential they truly are. Silver represents more than just a precious metal stored in vaults. It represents the connection between the physical universe and the technological future humanity is building. It reminds us that every revolutionary idea must still operate within the laws of physics. The elements found on Earth remain the building blocks of progress, enabling engineers, innovators, and visionaries to transform bold ideas into functioning systems that power the modern world. Thank you for watching and exploring this fascinating journey into the future of technology, energy, and resources. Your curiosity and attention help bring these important conversations to life.